Good morning, one and all. If you are keeping track of things, which we try to do here on Garden America, it is 6 minutes after the hour. We are back and ready to go. We trust you had a good week. As I glance back quickly at the computer, Tiger, to make sure that the computer is rolling. We are on time. It is Garden America. We've started the weekend. I'm Brian Main, Tiger Palafox, and John Bagnasco. Hey, guess what, gang? No guest today, which we'll get into a little bit later in terms of what that means to you. I guess that means more of us. And less of the guests, John. I'm going to toss to you right away.
More of our listeners, right?
If they'll take part.
Yeah, all you got to do is ask a question, but my computer's not working, so you got to look for the questions.
You got your iPhone, that works.
I do. I'm trying to
bring up Facebook,
figure out how to do that.
And Tiger will help you. So, yeah, what that does mean, no guest today, means more of your questions here on Facebook. You can take this show in any direction you want to. We are toward the end of August, the dog days, and I would imagine a lot of what you're doing right now should be prepping you or might affect the way your garden grows as we get into the winter and fall. Safe to say, John?
Yeah.
Tiger?
With all we know, your garden has to grow.
I always feel like the summer is you're just surviving, from the standpoint.
Right.
As long as you can keep the plants alive, as long as a critter or bug does not eat the plant, you're just surviving at this moment in time. And then as the fall comes around, now you're going to be doing your prep work, your hard work, your planting.
But you should be thinking about it.
You should be thinking about it. This is kind of like this is the East Coast winter for people on the West Coast. Meaning in the summer, you're thinking about what you're going to do.
Right.
When people in the winter on the East Coast, they think about what they're going to do in the spring.
Yeah, and for us, winter, fall comes around, but
the difference is in the winter, you don't have to keep your plants watered back east.
Exactly.
And very likely, we've got the same weather coming up in 2 or 3 months as we have right now anyway. So, get ready for fall and winter.
But there's some rain.
Well, last week I wanted to alert our listeners, and I forgot. But in preparing for hot weather, it's really important to start watering before it gets hot, before the plants begin to wilt. Because then, not only do you have to put water on to revive them, but they're already under stress. Mm-hmm. Speaking of stress.
Speaking of being stressed out.
I haven't sprayed my garden in 2 years. And I have very few I have no insect problems except for one. I have grasshoppers everywhere.
Really?
Have you?
I haven't noticed.
No? So I don't know.
Are you sure they're grasshoppers and not
locusts?
Locusts.
Yeah, I was going to say some kind of biblical thing happening.
No, there's a lot of grasshoppers.
Now what does that mean? If there's a lot of grasshoppers, something's going on in the environment.
And they don't just hop on grass.
They don't, do they?
They hop on a lot of plants.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I started thinking about insects this week was, and I think Tiger's going to try to get the author of this book as a guest in the future. And I don't remember the title of the book, but the premise of the book is that insects are disappearing. It kind of goes back to that thing I've told you guys about a long time ago about how if we didn't have cars, we'd be overrun with insects. But this person is pointing out that, remember 20 years ago when you would drive your car, how your windshield would be loaded with insects?
Loaded with bugs?
And now it's not.
Very little.
Yeah.
But you know what I see more of now?
Now, I'm sure it's different in different parts of the country.
But here's what I see more now that I don't recall seeing prior. And that's the little yellow bug poop on your car. That's really, really hard to get off all over your car. Those little yellow.
Those are bug guts.
Yeah.
No, because they're on the sides of the car. They're little yellow.
Yeah.
Almost hard, and they're hard to get off. And I don't recall ever seeing those. But getting back to your windshield theory.
Right.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of bugs on my windshield either.
No, in the front grill of your car, remember people used to put up those bug catchers?
Yeah, you'd have moth wings and
How do you know the
parts
bugs
of
aren't just
insects?
getting smarter and they're just avoiding freeways?
Oh, I think they're disappearing. You know how fast an aphid spreads, right?
Yeah.
Well, and aphids I know aren't flying on the freeways, but this is just an example. If you kill one aphid, you might be preventing, a million down the road?
Yeah.
So if you're killing millions of aphids.
How many then are you really killing?
There's billions,
that you're preventing,
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole
Now, aphids
windshield
was a bad
bug
choice,
splatter.
No, but
but
it's a
it
good
works with
example
other
of it. Ants,
insects too.
Other
So
things,
anyway,
yeah.
this it's going to be interesting to see this person's book and how the decline in insect population might be affecting us.
Because, I mean, as we know and we talk about, bugs are important, A, for pollination,
Right.
because that's how we get our products, food. And then, they even keep things in balance. You talk about the grasshoppers plaguing you. There is a purpose behind grasshoppers.
Well, exactly. Right.
Is that, they feed birds. That's one of the reasons why. They do control plant growth. So
Right.
that's another reason why they're important. And if you're, less grasshoppers, then you're going to have less birds. You're going to have more plant
Well,
growth.
the same with a lot of insects are
Right.
bird food, right?
Right, exactly. So, that's all connected, and then, you have less birds, and now this is a whole nother area
So
that you have
Carolyn
to...
on Facebook says those yellow spots I was talking about sometimes blamed on the many hummingbirds flying around.
Hummingbird poop?
I don't know. I
maybe?
just don't
Yeah.
recall seeing those, 10, 15 years ago.
Really?
You go to the car wash.
Now, you got a phone call. Somebody's going to tell you
Oh,
about
people are
it.
excited. You go to the car wash. You go to the car wash, and you still have to rub them out afterwards because it doesn't come off your car.
That's
That's what I'm upset about.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
what about- hey,
now you
John?
get that new ceramic coating on your car, Brian, and
You've
you're all
got a
good.
good memory about that, don't you? So what about, let's see, the last time I took a trip, let's say leaving San Diego, heading to El Centro, there was a time when all of a sudden all these butterflies were just coming at you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the migration.
Migration of the
Yes.
monarchs, right?
Yes, and that has been a noticeable, documented decline.
Right.
For sure. That is something that has been documented for many, many years, and they're trying to figure out why. And obviously everybody's planting Asclepius to be able to help out the monarchs and repopulate, and they have protected areas now in state and national forests that help with that as well.
So what are we doing, John? The premise of the book, what are we doing that's creating a decline in insects?
I don't know. That's why I want to get this person on.
Exactly.
Because I never even thought
Somebody,
never entered my mind.
somebody in this building about a month ago said the same thing, and I was a little skeptical. I'm like, well, really? I don't know if I buy that or not. Now you bring it up, so maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we all just live in a world where we just think bugs are just always going to be there.
And they're annoying.
And they're annoying, and so it
Right.
doesn't really matter that they're gone.
No, but it's like anything else. There's a whole balance going on there.
Yeah.
We need
And you
bugs.
talk about feeding the birds. Well, what about feeding the population of Japan and China?
Right. Or parts of Mexico, they eat a lot of crickets down
Right,
Do
right,
they?
right.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Who do you think is the biggest?
Bug eater.
No, but not going to go there. The one insect that just wreaks havoc on every other insect in their world.
You mean insect that wreaks havoc
That-
on
that
other
just like-
insects?
I can't use that word.
So you're talking about a bug that eats other bugs.
That's just mean, and like if you're a bug or an insect and you come across this insect, you're done unless you get the heck out of there.
Spider.
No,
You don't think so?
no,
All right.
no. This one
Ant.
this one eats other insects alive.
Ant.
Oh, come on, you guys.
Praying mantis?
There you go, the praying mantis.
Yeah, but they don't do many.
Yeah, they're just like one at a time.
Now,
and
let me tell you something. A praying mantis wreaks havoc, and if you're an insect and
you,
you're a
you're
bug,
scared of a praying mantis?
no, I'm not scared.
No, but I'm saying if you're another bug and you see a praying
Oh, you're
mantis,
done.
you're walking away for
You're
sure.
done. You're done. Absolutely.
Meantime, that praying mantis is holding on to one bug with its
Yeah.
little tiny hands, eating it.
Yeah, alive.
And a million walk by.
Alive. Then he goes to the next one.
Get
See, the thing that always bothered me about praying mantids
Mantis?
Yeah.
is their reproductive method,
Yeah, where they
Where
kill
they-
the male.
where the female
And then eats the
eats the head of the male.
Well, doesn't the black widow spider same thing? She kills the male after they're done.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why it's a black widow, right?
When you tell that to a woman, they go, "Huh." There's not much of a reaction. Like, isn't that too bad?
Yeah.
They're like, "Huh."
Have to
But
think about that one.
I don't know. I think spiders even strike fear in humans,
Well,
and not so much.
humans.
And not
Yeah,
so much
humans.
because I'm
there's
scared.
arachnophobia. There's
Well,
no
yeah, I'm
praying
talking about other
manophobia.
Yeah, exactly.
The
You know,
praying
just
mantis-
walking through a spider web, you walk through it and you're like,
and you know what? You do a tribal war dance.
Yeah.
You've seen people do that.
Exactly.
But I'm just talking about if you're an insect that praying, you don't want to come across a praying mantis.
Yeah.
So I'm
I've
not-
held praying manads in my hand, right? And
Yeah.
They walk on your fingers.
Yeah, and you can even train them.
Really?
Sure. Okay, we've got. Well, you know, I was going to go to John's quote,
uh-huh.
but did you see how long it is?
Yeah, I was gonna say
It's a
that's
book.
why we
Well,
don't
you
have
know
a
what?
guest. That's why we don't have a guest this week.
Because of my
because of his
quote.
quote.
Well, there's something interesting behind that quote, too, that we can talk about when we come back.
I had one eating a grasshopper's head off, and it was awesome.
Oh, praying mantis.
You know who wrote that?
Oh,
Gina Richardson.
really?
We're going to talk about bugs. We're going to take a break. More
Gina
bug
Richardson
talk.
lives up in Meridian, Idaho.
Yes, we know her very well. We're going to come back with John's quote of the month. It's that long. You are tuned into the Garden America Show. Happy weekend. I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasker, Tiger Palafox. No guest today, so yeah, this is just a taste of where this show is going here on Garden America. And just like that, if you're tuned in on Facebook Live, we are back. A bit longer break on Biz Talk Radio. We thank Travis and the guys at Biz Talk Radio keeping us on the air. And, of course, those wonderful sponsors who keep us going on Biz Talk Radio. We've been talking about insects, bugs, praying mantises, spiders. We'll continue that if you'd like. But
I think
first
it's
of all,
mantids is the
mantids
plural.
for the plural?
Yeah.
I think that's what you said to begin with.
Right.
And you were correct. Okay, so
Thank
here we
you.
go. Buckle up. John's got the quote of the week, or is it the paragraph of the week? I'm not sure.
You can go get a cup of coffee while I'm
Yeah.
reading it if you'd like.
So here you go. John Bagnasco.
Okay, this quote's from Charles Dudley Warner, and we'll talk a little bit about him after the quote, okay?
Okay, sure.
But he said, I know a lady, a member of the church, and a very good sort of woman who says that the weeds work on her to the extent that in going through her garden, she has the greatest difficulty in keeping the 10 Commandments in anything like an unfractured condition. I asked her which one, but she said, all of them. One felt like breaking the whole lot.
Let's talk about the background of this person.
Okay, Charles Dudley Warner was a contemporary of Mark Twain. He even wrote a book with Mark Twain, right?
Okay.
And he wrote a book about, I can't remember what it was about, but in the book, he had tales of his visit to San Diego. And he was so complimentary of San Diego that if you go to Point Loma, Tiger, there's a Charles Street,
Oh,
I've seen
a
that.
Dudley,
Yeah.
Dudley Street.
Yes.
That's the next one over, and then Warner Street.
wow.
So San Diego was so impressed with all the nice things he said about the city, they named those 3 streets
So
after
now, what
him.
years are we talking about that he was here in San Diego? Because just to get an idea of where we were
Well,
progressively.
he was a contemporary of Mark Twain,
Okay,
so
so
it would have been the late 1800s,
1800s.
early 1900s,
When,
right?
and if you look at pictures of San Diego, like say the Pacific Beach area, Claremont, the ocean, it's farmland. It looks
So-
like the Midwest.
So the name of the book, it's funny, is Our Italy, and it's his tales of Southern California. But
Oh.
he's calling it, he says, Our Italy.
Probably because the same latitude
Well,
line,
I mean,
the
yeah,
weather.
it's, we have the Mediterranean climate,
Right,
and
right.
you know, back in, as you were just saying, back in the day, it was farmland.
There was nothing
and
here.
There was no little Italy.
There was no
there?
little Italy at that time.
You see
yeah.
maybe one house every 5 or 6 blocks.
Yeah.
Interesting that he was so impressed back then. I'm
Yeah.
sure the weather had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Our Italy was his book.
Good.
And then he wrote a book,
Good quote.
like I said, with Mark Twain. The two of them collaborated.
You know, somebody brought up, we're talking about insects before the break, the Hellstrom Chronicles. You
Yeah.
recall that documentary? The whole premise of that was that insects would eventually take over the world. There are so many insects.
And then there's the movie Them.
Them, the Ants, 1952, starring James Arness, 51 or 52. Hey, a good buddy of mine's in Long Island watching our show.
Oh,
Want to say
really?
hi to Tim, high school friend. Got us tuned in. Long Island.
Do you know where Lenore lives?
Yes, Canyon Country.
She says she doesn't see praying mantis up there. And I'm trying to think. Praying mantis are pretty much all through.
Well, they're pretty good at hiding. You know.
Well,
see
yeah,
them.
they're-
Yeah,
and they
'cause
are
ambush
solid-
insects and eat them.
Right.
You know, and they
That's my
are
point.
solitary.
What about Palm Springs? It would be like a Palm Springs type climate. Maybe it's just too hot, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I kind of feel like praying mantis. You know, like you say, you can find them almost everywhere.
I haven't seen any
You know.
that I know of.
Well, like John says, they are actually pretty good at hiding. So, and they are solitary creatures,
Right.
meaning you find
Right.
one praying mantis, and that praying mantis kind of has an area, and it is kind of almost
That's
a whole
exactly
yard.
right, and they're very protective.
When the egg sac or egg
Oh, gosh.
case starts to hatch on a praying mantis and you get dozens and dozens coming out, first thing they do is start eating
Eating
each other.
Yeah. So that's my point. They're
They're crazy.
they're just
They're-
crazy. You
Yeah.
know, the word I want to use, I'm not going to use. They're really
Yeah.
really bad.
Yeah.
Hyphen. Figure it out. In the insect world, they're just yeah. I mean,
But speaking of praying mantis, I don't know if you both knew, and it actually is so funny. John mentioned the bug shortage, but this year, along with a shortage in everything else, but because of the fires and world, there were almost like no ladybugs. Normally, garden centers sell ladybugs
right.
all year long.
So there's a shortage.
Yeah, there's a shortage of ladybugs, this year, because a number of different things. But that is a kind of like a number one predatory insect that people introduce into the yards, and they don't ever feel like any kind of remorse for releasing these wonderful little ladybugs into the garden to eat aphids. And
Did you ever see that show on History Channel, the end of mankind? If we were wiped off the face of the earth.
what it would like the earth would look like after a week and after a
and
month and
yeah.
after a year.
Okay, and how all these things that are endangered would come back again.
Yeah.
Like insects would repopulate. Wild animals or things that were endangered would,
Not dodos. Dodos would never come
They're
back.
working on bringing back the dodo. Did you know that?
I know that they were
Yeah.
working on breeding woolly mammoths, right?
Woolly mammoths, dodo. What's the other one? Yeah, they're doing a lot
Passenger
of weird things.
pigeon.
Messenger pigeon?
No,
pigeon?
passenger pigeon.
Passenger pigeon.
Do you know about the passenger pigeon?
I think I do.
You know Martha? That
Martha
was
Washington.
no, that was the last passenger pigeon that died at the Cincinnati Zoo.
No, I like these stories, though.
Held in captivity. Passenger pigeons in the late 1800s were so prolific that when a flock flew overhead, it would blot out the sun. There were billions of them, and within like 20 years, they were all gone.
So
From
what did we
billions to nothing.
What did we do to cause that?
Shot them and ate them.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what squab was. Remember squab?
Yes. Never had it, but
No, but you remember stories of it when you were little, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what they did. And a lot of people think, because usually you like to find somebody to blame for something, right? So
Of course.
they blame people for killing all the passenger pigeons, but one of their number one sources of food was American chestnuts. And that was also the chestnut blight started at that time. And from millions of chestnut trees, in a short period of time, they went down to nothing. And that was the chief source of food for passenger pigeons. So I think part of their demise was also a loss of food. And which brings us back to the insects, right? And there's an article in this week's newsletter about how insects are responsible for a lot of the fires we're having in California right now. And the reason is that the bark beetles have killed millions of trees in the forest. So now there's all these dead trees
And no environment for
that are
Dry and
Yeah.
dry and
Kindling.
and a fuel source for
Yeah.
fires once they get started. So the way to mitigate some of those fires is you got to get rid of those trees. But that particular insect
You take away their
is an
home, right?
insect out of, well, there's two. There is a native bark beetle that
Right.
doesn't usually cause that much damage,
yeah.
except in really drought times. But the imported bark beetles, it's usually imported insects, invasive insects, that become a problem because there's no natural predators to keep them in check.
We're going to take a break. I waited till John was done. How about that? Instead of interrupting him.
Very polite.
Well, the time told me, said, you know what, Brian, take a couple of moments and let John finish his thought. That's what the time told me. What does that say about me? Time talks to me.
Hearing things.
Time talks
Nice
to me.
picture of your hibiscus in the newsletter.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
let's talk about that when we come back.
All right.
And the newsletter, the website, and Alexa. You can hear our show on Alexa. I discovered that this morning. We're going to take a break. This is Garden America. Back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. We have returned. Didn't go anywhere. Been sitting here in the studio the whole time, but return in terms of the show is back on again, welcoming back our listeners on Biz Talk Radio, listeners and viewers right here on Facebook. As we continue on Garden America, no guest today, so we're going to go in different directions, have some fun. Those on Facebook Live, questions, comments, whatever you want to talk about, let us know, and we'll do that.
Hey, Carla in Huntington Beach says that you can film a horror movie about ants at her house.
Gosh, I'll bet they're probably all looking for water now, right?
Oh,
Do you know the
right?
scariest movie I saw about ants that I remember from when I was little was with Charlton Heston? Was it The Naked Jungle?
The Naked Jungle was a movie, yeah.
And wasn't that the one where the ants, army ants, came through and
I never
just
saw it.
devastated everything?
I never saw it.
And they would say, like, ants would, like, run over the carcass of a cow or something and completely
eat it.
destroy it.
You know, somebody had mentioned on Facebook, and we've talked about this before too, that with all the ants in the world, they weigh more than all the humans on Earth.
They weigh more than all the uncles, I bet, too.
It's good, John. You've done better. I've heard better, but that's okay.
That is a good one.
My son always tells me that it's timing, that if you do it quick, it doesn't have to be that good.
No. Just get it in there and get it out and
Right.
wait for the reaction.
Right. And it can be really good, but if you wait too long, it's like, oh, all right.
So you mentioned my hibiscus, the giant hibiscus, in the newsletter. Wow.
You
that
never
is
tell me the name
Photoshop.
of that. You don't have the tags anymore to tell you the names?
I've got two of them.
Yeah, I know.
Tags?
I know you got two. I gave them to you.
I just know that. Well, then you should know. They're just giant. I probably do. I don't take tags off. I just call it my giant hibiscus.
When I gave
pretty.
those to you, I picked them out specifically because I thought you'd be impressed with the colors and the
Some-
size. And,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
And I remember during the wintertime last year, John said, "It's still blooming in the winter?" I go, yeah. Now, it has to make you happy that when you gave me those, that they're thriving and I'm taking good care of them. They didn't just disappear where I stopped talking about a plant.
Usually,
If I don't bring it up, John will never
Yeah,
know it's gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. That's my.
you usually do a really good job of taking care of your plants. I'm sure I lose many more plants than you've ever even owned.
Well, it's a numbers game.
Yeah, well, that's true.
You know.
Hey, Michelle
Yeah. Go ahead.
says that she's rebuilding in Paradise, which was one of the times.
Paradise, that was burned down?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's rebuilding, and she wants quick-growing privacy trees and shrubs that don't grow higher than 20 to 30 feet. What do you suggest? Well, first of all, when you're thinking about quick-growing plants, there's not a lot of plants that grow very fast to a certain point and stop.
Just
Yeah,
stop. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That is
Like
tough.
somebody said, I want a real fast-growing 6-foot hedge. well, what's going to grow fast to 6 feet and just stop? Nothing,
Right.
But I do know what she's talking about. And there are some small trees that are kind of fast growing, small acacias, right?
Yeah. What did she say again?
20 to 30 feet.
20 to 30 feet.
Privacy trees and shrubs, no higher than 20 to 30
There's
feet.
some varieties of podocarpus, and they'll do well up there in paradise, right?
They should. You don't want the Mackeye though. They're kind of slow growing to like 8 feet or something.
Well, the Macrophylla Mackeye is the short version. That's only to about 8 feet. But then there's Hinckley Gracilior Macrophylla.
Right. But Gracilior is going to be a lot taller.
That's going to get up to 60, I think.
Yeah.
Is what that one. But I think that the Hinckley is the one that I think maxes out at about 30 feet, if I remember correctly.
Well, there's also some bamboos that don't get to be too tall.
Yeah.
And you can use clumping bamboos, so you don't have to worry about them running all over. And I'm thinking Alphonse Carr would be an excellent one.
And it's funny because you just said there's not a lot of plants that grow up to that certain height and stop. And that is one plant that actually grows very quickly to that height and then stops.
And then does stop. Right. So anyway, it's bamboo, Alphonse Carr. It'll be really hardy up there.
Is that going to be messy, that bamboo?
Yes.
Well, all bamboos.
Yeah, well, I brought that up as a question knowing the answer.
But it's like a natural mulch, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Podocarpus.
And it depends where you're putting it.
I think bamboo's worth the mess. I love bamboo.
Do you?
I really do, yeah.
Yeah.
But acacias and dodoneas.
Dodoneas, that's a good option up there too.
Yeah, those
and
are
burgundy foliage.
right.
Yeah.
Hopseed, I think, is the common name.
And we were talking about spiders earlier.
Hopseed used to be on Bonanza, right?
Hop sing.
Oh,
My daughter usually uses the gate in our back fence to walk to school, but Thursday and Friday she went around the block because the gate was full of spiders.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I don't blame her.
See? But if she saw a praying mantis sitting there, she'd walk right through
I
it.
didn't say that a mantis, that as humans we have to worry about it. If you
As
were
a
an insect,
bug.
if
As
you
a
were a
bug.
bug, Tiger.
I would be scared.
Yeah, you know what? Spiders, it depends. For the most part, spiders don't bother me. But if you look at these spiders from South America, Indonesia,
Yes.
the size of dinner
They
plates,
are scary.
I might want to avoid those.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
There's bird-eating spiders,
There
right?
are bird-eating spiders, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
not big birds like ostriches.
gonna bring
or
down a
anything
hawk.
like that.
Can you imagine a spider eating a bald eagle?
But
Goodness.
yeah, those
That
big
would scare-
spiders.
that would
And
scare
spiders
anyone.
with hair on them. I'm not a tarantula guy for the most part. What about you?
No,
People have them as pets.
yeah,
tarantulas.
I would never do that. Hey, Kim in Tucson
All right.
says that she has a new interest in cannas.
Ooh, okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, but she wants to know what fertilizer we'd recommend to keep them blooming, and the secret to keeping the leaves is amazing is the blooms.
Sluggo.
Sluggo.
Well, I don't know if they have
Snails.
a snail problem in Tucson, but I think they might have a sunburn problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
pretty hot.
the only way to overcome that, because cannas are really, some of them are tropical bulbs and some are even aquatic, right?
Yep.
So they like a lot of water. So the key is going to be keeping the bed where the cannas are moist, especially if you've got a sandy type soil that drains really well. And during the summer, if it's too hot, maybe just putting shade cloth over the top of them.
Yeah, I was going to recommend shade even because sometimes you can even water them. You can keep them in like bogs,
Right.
but they still get burned from the sun. So definitely a shade covering. And
Because
then
their natural environment's really humid, and that's
Right.
not going to be Tucson.
we had horn cannas on our program before, and I want to
Right.
say, aren't they in the Midwest somewhere?
I think that I'm trying to think for some reason Nebraska or
Yeah, and you
Kansas
would
is-
think like, what?
Yeah.
Cannas?
But those are humid.
And there you go. It's
Right.
actually very humid, very wet, and the sun is not as intense,
Right.
as
Right,
Tucson.
right, yeah.
And
is-
also, all they do is sell the rhizomes, so
Yeah.
they don't
They don't
care,
care about
if
what the
leaves
plant
are
looks
burned
like.
or not.
Hey, we talked about trees, shrubs from Rochelle. She says, what about cherry laurel?
Oh, the Prunus Carolina? Is that the cherry laurel?
Caroliniana, right?
Yeah.
There is a Carolina. I don't know, but yes, that's an excellent choice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know if would you call that really fast growing?
Um,
There's one Monrovia has a particular variety that they have.
bright and
which-
tight.
Yeah,
Bright and tight, right?
yeah, which I really like, and it's relatively fast growing.
Yeah, yeah. I would consider it in that group of fast-growing shrubs, hedges. Because
Texas privet's pretty fast growing, but
that only gets up to, I think,
to
I
like
mean,
6 feet, right?
yeah. I mean, there are some privets, some other ligustrums that get a bit taller,
Uh-huh.
but the Texanum, only gets up to about 8 feet, I think is what it tops out at. But the other thing, back to the cannas, fertilization. They
Slow release, right?
yeah, they like a slow release, and John will also the blooming. I think they're more of a nitrogen fertilizer plant, right? Like they just kind of like a good nitrogen fertilizer.
I if it was me, I would just, especially with the heat down in Tucson, I would use Milorganite because that's going to build up the soil. If you're going to keep them in the same area, the soil will, as you add organic material to it, it's going to be much better.
Milorganite.
Improve drainage.
And then another thing I thought about too with keeping the foliage looking good is it does help to divide them a bit, because they do get over many years they get big clumps, and when you get these big clumps of these rhizomes and bulbs from these different kind of root plants, the foliage fails because they get either compacted, or there's just too much, or they just get damaged in so many different ways. So if you can divide them a bit, I don't know, you don't have to do it annually, but every few years,
Probably
I would
every
get in
3 years would be good.
We're going to use this time to take a break. Going to come right back on Facebook Live, a bit longer on Biz Talk Radio. Thank you for supporting our sponsors. It is Garden America for your Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, depending upon where you are. John Bagnasco, I'm Brian Main. Tiger Palafox. Keep those questions and comments coming live on Facebook. It is your show here on Garden America. We have returned from the break. If you are listening to us on Biz Talk Radio, this is the final segment of hour number one. You've got news coming up, top of the hour, 6 minutes after we return. Here on Facebook, there is no time limit. We keep on rolling right along, and we do appreciate you tuning in this morning here on Garden America.
Hey, it's, September next week, right?
Yes, Thursday, I think, right? September 1st?
Yeah. So it's not too early to start thinking about fall bulbs. And one that I would really recommend for people in specifically Southern California, but even in other drier areas, you know that freesias don't do that well in the ground. Freesias have been hybridized to where you have these like florist varieties.
Right.
And they'll come up if you plant the bulbs, but they're not going to really naturalize and keep spreading from year to year. But there is a Freesia Alba, the white freesia, which is probably the most fragrant of any freesia. I mean, it's so powerful it'll knock you out, Brian.
Really?
That's how strong it is.
Yeah, I want to be knocked out by a freesia.
But it's almost impossible to find. But if you go to Old House Gardens right now, and there's a link in the newsletter, and I'm sure you can find it, they're available. And what's interesting about Old House Gardens, they grow a lot of heirloom varieties of bulbs, but their stock of Freesia albas, or the white freesias, came from a garden in Southern California.
Oh, wow.
So
Who knew?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
they
it's
do.
it's
so it's going to do well here.
Yeah,
Yes,
it'll
yes.
naturalize here, and it's not going to get the thrips like the other freesias get. So try that. Just a great plant for naturalizing.
So you remember I ordered those dahlias?
Yeah.
And when I ordered those dahlias, and I know that I don't live in an area that will do well, but I ordered some alliums too.
When has that stopped any of us before?
Because when we went to England,
Because when we went to England, I saw these alliums and I just loved them. And so I'm waiting. Those are going to be my fall planting, this year. So I'm still waiting.
What are you going to do to help their survival?
Nothing.
If
I'm
anything?
just going to see if it works.
Just plant. Yeah, that's what we all do.
I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go and build like a shade house for
Because
a certain
it still
plant.
may not work.
Maybe when I'm John's age and I have all the time in the world,
All the time in the world.
I'll be out there like what was Dennis the Menace's neighbor, Mr. Wilson. You remember Mr. Wilson?
Of course I remember.
Built that little house for his flower and
Mr. Wilson, Dennis the Menace reference from Tiger.
yeah. But
about that?
for
What
now,
I would do with the allium, though, is
Uh-huh.
the reason they don't grow here is because they don't get enough winter chill.
Uh-huh.
So you might want to treat it like a tulip or a hyacinth.
put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
Now, if I get them from the grower, though, they probably are going to be chilled this year, right? Like a tulip. Like when a tulip
many
first
hours of
arrives.
I would say most growers will not
Okay.
pre-chill their bulbs because
So-
there's no reason for them to do it.
Okay.
Now, Flamingo Holland used to do that, sell pre-chilled bulbs. But unless it specifically said it was pre-chilled, it probably wasn't.
All right.
I don't know that I would trust a pre-chilled bulb anyway. Really? Right?
I got to go all the way back up here. I wanted to mention, Kim mentioned she has a program where they can buy trees from a power company, and we can buy 3 a year climating
Yeah.
her yard with lots of trees help. So she's planting trees to create microclimates
Right.
in her
Within,
garden.
within the garden.
And I think she might be mistaken, but I think that the power company gives you trees. I don't think you necessarily have to buy them. I know here in
Well, it's
San Diego
Texas.
County,
Yeah.
they give you trees to plant on your property because the benefit for the
It
power
behooves
company
them.
is it shades your home, you use less power and all of that.
Provides more fuel so that if there's something goes with the power lines, it can
Gets-
start a fire.
Yeah, I was gonna say grows into the power lines, and then they have to chop up the tree anyways. But depending on where you live, there's a lot of programs for people to get trees, and they are trees that they recommend. Might not be the most ideal tree
Right,
for you,
exactly.
but
But
they
it-
are trees they recommend for regions and areas to hopefully benefit. So if you have a new home, I've been driving up and back and forth to Temecula, which for those of you that aren't familiar with the area, it's about an hour north of San Diego, and it's a little bit more inland. And there's just thousands and thousands of homes going up there, brand new builds.
Right.
And if you have a new home, you want to start planting trees as soon as possible, just because they take years and
Yeah,
years.
Kim
to
says,
develop.
I wish no free trees here.
Oh, bummer. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
your point is well taken. And like you said, may not be ideal for what you want, but it's more for practicality.
Yeah.
Well, like she said, she's creating a microclimate because she's in Tucson. She's got all these trees now, and it kind of reminds me of Chico, because Chico's inland,
Yes.
hot part of California, right? And Chico used to be known as the city of roses, and now it's known as the city of trees. And you wouldn't think going into that type of environment that it's almost like going into a city back east with the number of trees that are around.
We were there in 2010. That was the last time that you and me and Bruce and Sharon
We
were
did
there.
the radio show up there at
We sure-
KPAY.
Sure did.
And then we went to the fair, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think the year you came, you only came 1 year, right?
Well, that's 2010 because I remember Bruce and I were sitting in the car that we rented, listening to the Aztec game when they went to the Sweet 16 because Kawhi Leonard was still playing for the Aztecs. And I remember the Aztecs won the game, and Bruce and I are high-fiving each other in the car. It's just one
but I
of those
was
moments.
thinking, didn't it rain that year?
Yeah, it did.
It was
Yeah.
really bad rain.
We
And
stayed at a little bed and breakfast with the pecan trees behind us.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do
Jeez,
remember.
fancy.
Yeah, it was. Oh, we used to do a lot of cool things, Tiger.
Yeah, before you came
Before
here.
I came around.
No, we've done cool things with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, like going to
England.
England. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
And you know what we've done? I took my pictures from my computer and I transferred them over to Alexis on my TV set. So if I'm not watching, TV, then it has a screensaver come up, John.
Oh, cool.
And it's all these pictures of, of Europe and places that we've been one after another. And it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Memories.
And speaking of Alexa, you found out today that you can hear our program from Alexa.
I was in my car. I have Alexa in my car.
Right now, there's so many Alexas going off in
I know.
people's homes.
But I just said, I think, and I'm trying to remember how I brought us up. I might have said, take me to Biz Talk Radio, Garden America show. I had to do it a couple of times. And then all of a sudden she said, taking you to Garden America. What was last week's show called?
Alpine
Yeah,
Gardens?
she goes, today's show, Alpine Gardens. So I listened to last week's show on Alexa. There's your tip. If you have Alexa, you can another way to hear our show.
Yeah.
Last week's show wasn't.
Was
2
not-
weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2
2 weeks ago. Hey,
Yeah.
we're going to take a break. Those on Biz Talk Radio, news coming up top of the hour on this pre-recorded show to keep things on time. And then we're going to come right back here on Facebook Live. No guest today, so it's been your show. Lots of questions.
Yeah, lots of
Great comments. Having a good time. We've talked about bugs, insects, spiders. We've talked about trees, hedges.
And when we come back, Keith wants to know about fall vegetables.
Well, Keith, we're going to tell you that and more next on Garden America. Welcome back to the show. Those on Biz Talk Radio, good afternoon to you. 6 minutes after the hour. Hope you enjoyed that break. Those on Facebook Live, thank you for being there. A lot of people tuned in this morning, so we appreciate that. Be sure to go to our new and improved, and I mean that when I say new and improved website, gardenamerica.com. Check it out. There's links to everything, previous shows, podcasts. There's articles. There's, you know what? You go and you just let us know what you think.
I want to write that down. What is it? A www.
Oh, yeah. www.
HTTP.
Yeah, .gardenamerica.com. But again, yeah, all
That's
kidding
easy
aside,
to remember.
check it out. Lots of things on that website.
Gardenamerica.com.
Daniel's done a great job. Our IT guy Daniel's done a great job on bringing us up to the 21st century.
Someone else who does a great job is our buddy Keith in Point Loma.
He does a fantastic
growing
job.
things around his house. And right now, you guys know how much I like cashmere cypress, right?
Oh, yeah.
I
We
think
talk
it's like
about it
the
all the time.
most beautiful conifer in the world. And it was the first plant that I planted on my property. And thank you to Tiger for picking it up at Keith's house.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Keith for having
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I got to just shout out to Keith. He gave me a plumeria last year. Keith, the thing is huge.
Clivia he gave you too,
And
right?
Clivia. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah. Anything else you want Keith to get you for Christmas?
Let's see. Keith, let me think about that, Keith.
Yeah.
Anyway, Keith says, what vegetables would be good to plant in the coming weeks and months?
Oh, rutabaga.
Delicious.
What about celeriac? So I think we mentioned this last week, Tiger. One of the problems with fall plants, now Keith won't have that problem because he's on the coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Point Loma. I don't
It's
know
a
if
little
he's
windy
near
now and then. you know.
Charles Street or Dudley Street or
sure.
Warner Street. But one of the problems inland is that if you put in the cabbage type crops, they're referred to as cole crops. So you got cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli,
All those things that kids love.
yeah, cauliflower. But the problem is that it still gets hot. Like right now, if you had put those things in, the first thing you're going to do is have a cabbage moth come visit it, lay eggs, and you're gonna have cabbage worms everywhere. But on the coast, you've got, I would say, probably 3 weeks to even a month earlier that you can plant than if you're further inland. So maybe the cole crops you could start putting in. What would you say, the end of September, Tiger?
Yeah. End of September, yeah. And then October, you're going to maybe get a little bit of some dry weather here and there, but it's not going to be nearly as much as what we're going to get over the next few weeks. Yeah.
And then planting from seed, you've got peas, which can go in probably October.
Yep.
And then you've got a lot of the root crops. The weather's cooled off again, so you can start putting in radishes, carrots. Beets.
Turnips, parsnip.
turnips for.
How about what he can't plant?
No, I mean
That's
yeah.
a lot. That's
Well, you can't plant squash, and you can't plant all the
Peppers,
summer things, peppers, tomatoes.
all the things we want to plant.
Right. If you want to plant winter tomatoes, this is the month to put those in.
Yep.
Hey, Tiger, do you recall the species of tomato plant that you gave us?
The thornburns.
Is that what it was, Thornburn?
Thornburn's terracotta.
Okay,
yeah.
because we just picked the first one, and
What size is it?
I would say
Okay, so yeah, that might be a thornburn. It's kind of
Yeah.
orangish color.
orange, not huge,
Right.
but
Yeah.
very, very,
More of
very
a terracotta color, right?
good. Yeah, more of a terracotta color. Anyway, really very juicy.
Good.
It's like a plum.
Nice.
Yeah, but juice went everywhere.
Yeah.
We were in the kitchen though, so we
Went crazy with
we were
it.
crazy with the juice. Very good.
But
Yeah, Keith.
in terms of the some of the things fall veggies this is the time of year too when because as John mentioned, cauliflower, broccoli, but you can do the different colored broccolis and cauliflower or broccolini this time of year. Definitely I think that's the kind of fun stuff to do for the fall veggies because if you're in Southern California, or probably I think most of the southern states, the broccoli or cauliflower that you grow is not going to be like what you're accustomed to from getting from the grocery store, because they grow that broccoli in the Pacific Northwest where it's a cool 70 degrees
Right.
for the 2-month period that it grows, and you get these beautiful big heads of broccoli. But the one thing you won't find in a grocery store is the broccolini, is the purple one, is the orange one, cauliflower, and different things like that. So that's kind of fun stuff to grow.
And I think the thing that you're going to probably get the most use out of is going to be lettuces.
Yes.
If you put in successive crops of lettuces,
Lettuces?
yeah,
Not lettuce. Lettuces.
lettuces, different varieties
Well,
of
because
lettuce.
you need to use
Plural.
a bit. You don't just use one piece of lettuce at a time, right? So
But okay, so look at all the lettuce, or look at all the lettuce.
And one I'd recommend is a really old heirloom variety called Black Seeded Simpson. You want to wait till
Sounds like an outlaw from the Old
yeah,
West.
watch out.
you want to make sure that the weather's cooled off enough for that, but it's so tender and has such a great flavor, and it's probably the cheapest seed you can buy out there. One thing to remember on lettuce seed is that it doesn't last. Like usually seeds will lose about 10% germination a year. Lettuce can lose like 50 to 90% germination
Goes
in a
downhill
year.
quickly.
So plant fresh seed.
Yeah. And speaking of seeds, we have a question. Did we wrap up everything we need to
Yeah, I think
mention with
so.
Keith?
Yeah.
From Kim,
Tucson, Kim?
yes, she mentioned when would be the time of year to plant wildflower. Now, they're dealing with monsoon season right now, where they're getting
Lots of rain. Yeah.
rain. And normally, I would say when it's raining, wildflowers are great to plant. But when you're getting monsoon rain, I imagine it's just going to wash everything away. So you got to be careful with that.
Well, the other thing is if you plant wildflowers and they germinate, you have to be able to keep them wet after that.
After.
So it depends. After the monsoons, do you have another hot season? Usually October is I recall from working in Phoenix and the Tucson area. You look
were
at
there? When were you there working? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but I never heard this
I
story
used to
before.
go there once a month.
Okay.
Because we had a number of stores over there that I used to buy for and do advertising for. But anyway, I would look at October as our spring, because there in Arizona you can't plant in the spring because it gets really hot
Really
and
hot
everything
right away.
fries. So you look at their planting season really like the 1st of October.
Yeah.
So the thing with Kim and her wildflowers is she's, she could plant them now, but the thing is between now and October, if Tucson, I don't recall Tucson specifically, but if they have temperatures that can still get up over 100, you might want to wait a little.
Yeah, and then for the, like as John mentioned, the general rule for the wildflowers, if you can get them in, during the first rain, and then you're going to have cool, a little bit of rain kind of after that. that's the best thing, because as you know they're going to germinate. Then when they germinate, they're going to get watered again by a little bit of rain, and then they'll be able to grow and actually have a full season. But if you plant them too early, they'll germinate, they'll grow, but then they'll just die before they actually get a chance to flower or grow.
She says, okay, I'll wait. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you, Kim.
I like it when people do exactly what we tell them. Right. Now, if I could get my wife, never mind. Just get me in trouble.
We'll just leave that there. Oh.
So yesterday, I was really excited. First of all, I almost had a heat stroke. I got really dizzy and almost fell down the hill because I was working out in 97-degree
Almost
temperature.
fell down the hill.
Yeah.
It's hot in them thar parts.
Yeah.
But I was, we were digging trenches with a trencher, putting in irrigation pipe, which I guess we'll do today. But I think in my first rose beds, I'll have all the irrigation done and can actually start planting.
Wow.
So excited about that.
I don't envy you for trenching. Not something I'd look forward to do.
Well,
90 degrees, 97.
to be honest, I held the hose.
Yeah.
And
No, don't tell us. You're ruining the story.
Yeah.
and shot it at the trencher as my son was doing the
I like
trenching.
the other story better.
Yeah.
I just want to picture you doing all the heavy work and all the heavy labor out there.
He ran the bobcat, and I just ran the hose.
We're going to take a, speaking of running the hose, John, makes no sense. We're going into a break. Has nothing to do with running a hose. We're going to take a break for our friends on Biz Talk Radio, so thank you for tuning in. And to those on Facebook Live, keep those questions, comments rolling in. Hopefully we're helping you as we talk about gardening and horticulture, landscaping here, as we always do on Garden America. We have returned from the break, shorter on Facebook Live, a bit longer on Biz Talk Radio, so thank you for supporting our sponsors here on Garden America.
Hey, remember last week we talked a little bit about the African wisteria tree?
Yes, and you have, speaking of the newsletter,
What?
the wisteria tree.
Last week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what, okay.
Yes.
Because it wasn't in this week's.
No,
This week's
no,
was the Freesia.
We wouldn't do that.
That's right. But anyway, we had a few comments. People were asking how tall those trees got, and about 15 to 20 feet. So you're looking at a smaller size tree, which is really nice. So
Really nice, isn't it, John?
it's very nice.
Smaller type tree. How fast growing?
Uh,
Not very fast.
No, it's kind of a slow-growing tree. So, but anyway, 15 to 20-foot trees are perfect for Southern California lots, for small lots.
Yeah.
Small gardens.
You know, people used to plant eucalyptus everywhere. And I don't even know if nurseries, do you guys carry eucalyptus at your nursery?
No, I mean not like, yeah, we carry some of the dwarf. You know, there's a few
Right.
dwarf
How tall do the
varieties.
dwarfs get?
20 feet?
I'm just used to seeing the ones that are 150 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
There's, you've read Eucalypts Volume 1 and Eucalypts Volume 2
Not
by
two.
Stan Kelly.
Not
You didn't
one,
read
one,
two.
but I didn't read two. I didn't like one that much.
Well,
But John, you mentioned that smallish tree is good for the Southern California lots, and you're right there. But even in large lots, when you have these contrasting trees with flowers and foliage,
Right.
it really adds a lot to the landscape. I mean, just imagine, you might have a 2 or 3 acre lot and you have these trees, but then imagine this purple blooming
Right.
tree just sitting there with this backdrop of green as well. Just absolutely gorgeous. So, red buds, the wisteria tree that you talked about, cassias, those are all kind of smallish trees, but
small
they can
acacia.
add, they can
But I think
add a
that's
lot.
good to buy trees that match your lot size
Mm-hmm.
and don't overwhelm you.
I don't know if it's still popular, but one of the most popular small trees used to be Agonis flexuosa. Do people still plant that, Tiger?
Well,
The peppermint tree?
that one, the green one, is not as popular. But then there was
After Dark.
that After Dark that came out.
Right.
But that one just was never a good plant. Meaning, you know,
it's really slow growing.
it's
to
really
begin
slow
with, and it doesn't
growing.
have the. I think one of the attractive features of the peppermint tree was kind of weeping, and
Yep.
I never saw that on After Dark.
And they would not get established, and they would die real quick. So yeah, the Flexuosa though is a good one. We have a question come across from Aaron.
Yes.
I planted watermelon in mid-June and from seed and have some great vines and flowers but no fruit. I just fertilized for the second time. Is there anything I can do to get them to produce? I have bees to help with the pollinization.
Pollinization's a big job, but if you get the bees to help you,
Yeah.
that's
And they're usually
That's
very
half the
cooperative.
battle.
They're usually, and if they can't do it, they know a hive that will.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that a little bit of a late start was one of your problems with the watermelon, planting from seed. And then,
Now, I think Aaron's in Long Beach, so maybe not as bad a problem as if you were inland.
And then as far as getting them to actually set fruit, man, I don't know. I mean, she's got flowers, she's got bees.
Well, it depends what variety you plant, too, on watermelons. If you're planting the big size watermelons, you're looking at 120 days, so like 4 months to get fruit. Where
But I
if
mean,
you,
she doesn't even have fruit getting set.
right, but if you have the smaller ones, they're going to set fruit quicker.
Okay.
So she planted in June. So
July, August.
right, she
September.
should have had something by now.
Yeah.
It also depends on the amount of sun. They need full sun. If they're in any kind of area that's getting shade, they're not likely to set fruit.
And just to let you know, Aaron, I planted some cantaloupe in an area that I figured they were going to grow out of some shade and into the sun. So I was like, oh, it'll be fine because, they need to stay wet. And I figured it'd be a good area where they would stay wet and then grow into the sun. And because I planted them in a bit of a shady area, they just never grew out, and then they never produced fruit. So, yeah, I mean, even though it might be a sunny area, if they're in a little bit of shade, that could be some challenges right there. So maybe, I don't know if there's anything that we can say you can do right now that would solve the problem, though, because if you're watering, fertilizing, they're blooming, they're healthy plants, then that's all you really can do.
Did you see the question from Veronica?
Well, Veronica says, first of all, she's really glad to have found us.
Yes, she goes way
she
back.
missed us being on
Kogo.
Kogo. Were we ever on
Yes,
Kogo?
because I used to be the producer.
That's when Bruce did the
director
show
for
by
Bruce.
himself, right?
Yeah, back at the old building. I was Bruce's producer.
Yeah. So her question, Tiger, is how does she get rid of bottle brush bushes?
Yeah.
You cut them down.
Yeah. How do I get rid of a bottle brush bush? Yeah. I
Are
mean,
those ones that go out of control?
Well,
They don't go out of control. They're Australian natives, and they really become small trees, right? They're not just bushes.
Yeah.
So
lots of bees if you want to
Yeah.
attract bees. Yeah.
yeah.
But
But you'll have to cut them down,
and then remove the root.
and then remove the roots.
So it's more maintenance.
Well, it depends how big they are. You could call a tree removal service,
Yeah.
and they come in with stump grinders if you need to do that, or you could get a trencher, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what would be better for getting rid of bottle brush.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times depending because a lot of people will plant them in an area where they're almost like a hedge.
Uh-huh.
Right? So a lot of times you have to get in there, cut them down, and then remove the roots with a grinder because, there's not always room for a trencher to do the job. But you do need to remove the roots because they will grow back. They are one of those plants that you can cut them down, and then they will start to sprout from the trunk. So you need to grind out the stump or remove it. Sometimes they're not that bad. And, I mean, we will remove hedges, and people will be blown away because we'll just take an axe to the bottom part of the stump, and you cut out a few of their roots, and then you just pull out this stump, and they're like, whoa, that came out easy. And, yeah, sometimes they're not that bad.
Yeah.
It depends on how old they are and what they're in.
And the technique that you use to get it out so easily.
Yeah. So, that's the only way you're going to get rid of the bottle brushes. You got to dig them out, and you got to remove the stump. You can't just cut them down. They won't go away that easily.
I'm not positive because my memory fades over the years, but I think Veronica might have come to a focus group that I hosted about 20 years ago.
And that was about the time that I was producing Bruce's show.
No, it would have been a little later.
Okay. Anyway, welcome back, Veronica. We've been here. We've missed you.
Yeah.
So tell your
We were
friends.
about to call you and say,
Yeah.
where you been?
Tell your friends, tell your family about this show.
Aaron did say the shade might be the culprit because it has no morning sun, but full afternoon and evening sun.
We're going to take a
And
break,
she's
Tiger.
on the coast.
Yeah.
Quick break. Biz Talk Radio, Garden America, right here on Facebook Live for your weekend. Questions, comments on Facebook Live. This is Garden America. We are back from the break. A bit longer break on Biz Talk Radio, shorter on Facebook Live, but the benefit of watching us on Facebook Live is you can watch us during the break. What are those guys doing? What's going on over there?
Hey,
Anyway,
Gina,
we are back.
Gina made the comment about freesias won't grow in her area, but then she followed up with another comment, but I did find $100 worth of other bulbs.
See, that's what happens.
And Gina, how do you know freesias won't grow? Order some and try it out.
You know, this is interesting. If I went to a nursery or someplace to buy something specifically,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find it, I wouldn't leave till I bought something else. I'm going to leave with plants or whatever.
Something.
I'm not going to go home empty-handed.
Yeah.
What Gina could do, though, because she's right, freesias aren't going to grow. South African bulbs in general probably aren't going to do well in Idaho, but she could put them in a pot
Yes.
and then, start them in the spring when the weather warms up.
Are you going to read Kim? we got somebody
Aaron.
before
Aaron
that?
had one last question. It's an
Okay.
easy one for us. She says, how do you prevent the treat white splotches on zucchini foliage? And a lot of time, zucchini, cantaloupe, melons, they get mildew, and
Right.
especially along the coast. And if you're in any shade, heck, John probably gets mildew out in Fallbrook in the sun on some of those plants, right?
My daughter-in-law planted some squash plants that, are huge, gigantic, but, with 95-degree heat and low relative humidity, they've still got some mildew.
Exactly. So they
So
kind
it's
of go.
inevitable.
They kind of go hand in hand with a lot of plants. I mean, you can prevent it with a fungicide like a copper or.
What works really well is horticultural canola oil. And it has to be emulsified, Aaron. That's why we say horticultural canola oil, because oil doesn't mix with water, right? So if you use canola oil from the store, all you would have would be an oil slick.
Yeah, that's true.
You can maybe Google online how to emulsify that store-bought oil, because it's mainly, I think, just somehow mixing some soap suds or something with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you spray canola oil, that's a good organic way of getting rid of the mildew. It's not going to hurt any of the fruits or vegetables, and it does a
bugs
real
or
good job.
bugs. Yeah. But you do have to be careful because, you want to plant those plants in full sun, and these sprays need to be, I would even recommend using them in the evening, because even sometimes if you do it early in the morning and that sun breaks out early, you can get some of that foliage burn from using the sprays.
Well, if the temperatures are over 85 during the day,
Yeah.
you should probably not be using them unless, like Tiger says, you do it really late in the evening.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of goes hand in hand with that. Let's see. Then we had Kim said,
Talking about the
About the insects.
Insects.
I was going to bring up bats.
bats.
Because, they eat a ton of insects,
Sure they
right?
do.
And she said that the bat population's important in Tucson because that's how their saguaros are pollinated, right?
Yeah.
Bat
A lot of the
pollination.
desert plants are evening pollinated. A lot of the desert plants open in the evening.
Even
right?
the evening, right? Exactly.
Yeah. She says sometimes you wake up in the morning and your hummingbird feeder's empty from the day before, and it's because bats. ate the nectar over the night.
I
That's
like
crazy.
bats.
Can they? I didn't know they. I mean, I figured, yeah, you see the bat tongue, and
Yes.
it does, so, and they are like a pollinator.
But they seem too
bird.
big to be able to do
Right.
that.
I didn't ever thought about them going after a hummingbird feeder because hummingbird feeders, are designed
Right.
for a hummingbird to have that beak and tongue. And yeah.
I like the bat, or the flying fox, as they
Have you
call
ever
them.
been to Austin?
Yes.
In the bridge where the bats live under the bridge, and then you wait out there after, and then when
and then they all
sunset
fly
happens,
away?
they all fly out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Veronica said she was hoping for an easier solution on the
Yeah, I'm
bottle brush.
sorry.
There are some easier solutions. It just depends on whether or not you want to do it. If you had an axe or a machete, and you after you cut the bottle brush down, if you slice the trunks so that there's an area that you could pour Roundup in there, and let it absorb, it would go down and kill the root, and they're not going to come back.
Yeah, by the concentrate product, not the already ready to use product.
Right.
And then just like you say,
Yeah.
drop it right in there, and
Right.
that'll kill the trunk.
Right.
For sure.
And then you can join the class action suit against Monsanto.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be part of get that letter in the mail.
Yeah.
Hey, you may have some money owed to you.
Yeah, exactly. But I won't make any
I know
comments.
where
I'm just
this
going to
is
get in
going.
trouble. I personally have no problems with Roundup.
Did you see Mary?
Carla?
Yeah, Carla. I read and tried a solution of milk and water for powdery mildew. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah.
Milk and water. She said it seemed to work. Yeah, and then all the cats came to started lapping it up.
But
Milk's
did
not
she
good for
use?
cats.
Now the question we need to ask you, Carla, was it low fat? Or was it skim? Whole
Was it
milk?
almond? Was it almond milk?
Oh, exactly, right?
Now that's something a lot of people do. Rick in Star, Idaho, says that he's finally getting some tomatoes to ripen.
Yeah.
The same tomatoes that I have.
The same one.
Yeah.
Thornburn's terracotta.
Yep.
Terracotta. He said it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, very juicy. That's why I noticed that we
Well, the
sliced those
flavor on
open.
that's phenomenal. And I told you I had some that came up from seed.
Yeah.
In a completely, matter of fact, right in front of Keith's cashmere cypress.
Nice.
And those were the only tomatoes we really got this year.
Have you documented at all the growth of that cashmere cypress? Because the nice thing about it is it's right next to a telephone pole for you,
Right.
or power pole or something, so you can almost see it as you
Well, I
look at it.
planted it last summer.
Yeah.
And I have pictures of my son and daughter-in-law standing next to it
Oh.
because they were the ones who helped me plant it.
Uh-huh.
So I guess before they moved to
You have to take another
Indianapolis,
picture.
get another picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I planted it, it was really struggling because it had been in that container for a
Huh.
long time.
It was big. It was a big tree for that container. I remember when I picked it up.
Right.
Yeah.
And, struggling through a year and a half in a container going through 110-degree temperatures. It was kind of yellow, but now it's a beautiful blue color. Really looks good.
You just beam when you talk about that tree.
I like it. It's my pride and joy.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
He's gonna put a bench under it. It's gonna be a
I used to
little
work
bench.
with a corny guy who...
You said corny?
Corny, yeah.
Okay.
It's like one of those older corny guys. And I visited the store he was working at, and he says, "John, you want to see my pride and joy?" I said, "Sure." So
I think you hesitated. You went,
Yeah. Well, he's a
it's
corny
all
guy.
right."
He opens up his wallet and has a picture of Pride and Joy dishwashing liquid. It's like,
Typical dad kind of a joke.
yeah,
Oh man, the
like-
fact that he carries it around in his wallet.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy, though. As a matter of fact, a quick story about him.
Sure, you got a couple of minutes. Go ahead, John.
All right. I used to work for Nurseryland, and actually Tiger's dad was my boss many, many years ago. And Ortho Chemical Company used to have these dinners once a year that you would be invited to, and they would tell you about their chemicals, how to use them. And so everybody'd get dinner, and they'd go back to their stores, and they'd recommend Ortho Chemicals, right? Well, at these dinners, Tiger's dad had us stand up and introduce ourselves and the people in our store who were working there at the particular store, and so everybody would get to know him. And I got up to introduce my team, and I was really proud of. I was a new manager, and I was proud of the group that I had. And I said, this is Artie. He's my assistant manager, and he has a degree in a PhD in agronomy and plant genetics. And this is Elaine, my cashier, and she's a landscape architect. And this is Craig. He has a degree from here. He's been in the business for this many years, and I think there was one other person. And I was really, and everybody's kind of oohing, because you got all these qualified people working in your store, right? And the guy who I just told you about with the Bob with the Pride and Joy, he's up next, and he said, before I go any further, I just want to apologize that my water boy, who's a brain surgeon, couldn't be here today.
That's good. Hey, that's good. And we're going to take a break. We've got one more segment coming up. So questions, comments on Facebook Live, be sure to get those in. We're going to take a break. Like I said, Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live on your weekend. Brian Main, John Magnasco, Tiger Palafox, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you'll make it a habit to join us every week here on Garden America. Back with our final segment.
I don't.
Because I think.
Yeah, you can keep. We're just chit-chatting. Go ahead. The mics are on. You just keep chit-chatting. You kind of, peek into what's going on.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yeah, we are back here. We just keep chit-chatting during the break.
That's the problem when we don't have breaks. We just keep talking.
I know.
And then you turn on our microphones.
I always tell you, hot mics.
You did not say hot mic. Right?
No, I didn't. I surprised you. I ambushed you. So this is our final segment here. Been a good show, been a fun show. Thank you for tuning in, tuning out, coming back, and back to the questions. Roxanne, John.
Well, Roxanne says that a question that keeps coming up in gardening groups is, can you propagate a saguaro from an arm of a fallen saguaro? Do you know?
That would be something I would try, whether I knew the answer or not.
Well, all of the cactus that I'm aware of, now saguaro's a different animal, right? Because they're huge.
Right.
So all the cactus that I'm aware of, once they've calloused over, will root and form new plants.
Yeah.
So whether a saguaro would do that or not, I honestly don't know. But I imagine you could Google it.
Or try it.
And,
do it.
But yeah, I would say you really have nothing to lose. It depends on the climate. If you're near saguaro forest, right, national forest, or you're anywhere in Arizona where they're going to thrive, you'll have a better chance. And the time of year is going to make a difference too. I would imagine you would want to start before the rains, because you don't want a cactus cutting sitting in the ground with no roots, wet. But the important part is to make sure that they callus over. All those upright cactus that I'm aware of, like organ pipe cactus and things like that, you can take cuttings off and reroot.
And one of the things she mentions is of a fallen one, and I think that's maybe where some of the
instead of cutting it off purposely.
Well, no. But what I was going to say was, I think that where some of the difference might be is that a fallen one obviously fell for a reason.
For a reason, yeah, right.
And so if you have an arm of a fallen one, what you want to do is get a good clean cut back to a point where whatever caused that one to fall, whether it was rot or decay or a fungal issue, is not going to affect that new portion you're trying to grow. And then, as John mentioned, you cut it off, you let it heal, and then you can replant it, but you replant it in a very well-draining soil. Make sure that it doesn't rot out, and it should grow.
Siri gave her a different answer.
Yeah, here's a
Siri did?
Siri says you can only propagate from seed.
Really?
well.
Let's see, though.
I just looked this up on, Google tells you everything. It says, unfortunately, saguaros are one of the few cacti that will not root from cuttings or broken branches.
Oh.
And I would still try it. But, yeah, okay, that seems to be the general consensus.
Okay.
Yeah, so then it does not.
But if
I would try it.
if the whole plant tipped over and it's just uprooted,
That's a different story.
that's a different story, and it can be.
Yeah, because
You
they
know.
transplant those all the time
Yeah.
because they
Right.
can't remove them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like if you transplant it, you've removed it.
No, but I'm saying you can't just destroy it. You can't just
Uh.
eliminate them. You have to, if you have one in your property, you have to move it onto your property somewhere else or something, right? If I remember correctly.
So if you do plant a saguaro from a seed, it takes a long time.
Oh, jeez.
Isn't that how, right?
Or this
No,
way.
they're usually like
Like
this.
that?
Like this, yeah.
Well, but if they droop,
No,
it
they
falls
don't
off.
do that.
Yeah, they fall off.
No.
Yeah, you just said that. They fell off. The arm fell off.
The arm fell off.
They're being held up all the time.
Yeah,
That's what that's about.
So that's if you're looking for a fugitive saguaro,
That's exactly right.
a one-armed cactus.
Hey, who's on the show next week? Do we?
I think Melinda's back, if I remember correctly.
Oh, perfect, because we
We
didn't
just
get to
had her
finish with
last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah,
We
but
did.
she has more to say. We have
Yeah.
more to ask. More questions. Good
I,
old Milwaukee.
I would listen to a show called All Melinda All the Time.
Well, that'll be the title of next week's show. All Melinda, all the time. Yeah, no, I think we're going to be because we'll be more talking about fall.
Fall,
she has
exactly.
some fall topics.
You know, it's interesting because I did. I got a hold of the network and I said, okay, I want to make sure what we're running from Milorganite, make sure we start talking about fall, winter as we come out from spring and summer.
Yeah.
Because we are talking about Milorganite, and yes, it's pretty much good any time, but there are certain things you do need to know from a seasonal standpoint.
Yeah, right. And and then they're even honest and upfront that you don't need to fertilize all the time.
Hey, we
You
have
know?
a quick question from David. Do we have time to get it
Yes.
We do. We've got 2 minutes.
in? Okay. He wants recommendations for growing tomatoes and squashes in containers that are 24 by 24. He says he has a client that used a general potting soil, which turned into a thick paste in 1 year. And he's using cactus mix at his home, but he would like our opinion. My opinion is going to be the same on planting most things like that, vegetables, and all my roses have the either ocean forest
Right.
or Happy
Happy
Frog
Happy Frog.
potting soil. And the reason, David, is that there's more perlite. Perlite's the most expensive ingredient in potting soil.
For drainage.
So the cheaper a potting soil is, the less perlite
Yes.
that's in it. And it's really important.
And it'll start to separate from the side of the
Right.
pot.
And they are organic, so they are going to decompose every year, but you don't have to throw the soil away. You can just add more the following year. Get the roots out and then add more. So I think you'll be shocked. The main difference between those two soils is that there's more fertilizer in the ocean forest, more organic
Right.
fertilizers. So if you use Happy Frog, you get the same consistency, but you're going to have to use a little more fertilizer, and time release in there would be good.
Here's a quick question. Gardenia, full morning sun or shadier area?
Where do you live?
San Diego, Point Loma area, more toward the ocean maybe?
Yeah, shadier area.
Shadier area.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this.
Preface.
When you go to Phoenix, Arizona, they plant gardenias in full sun.
So I think you're safe
Yeah.
either way.
Yeah, the Gardenia vechi, the ever-blooming gardenia, will take more sun than the mystery gardenia, which requires a little more shade. But I would say if you're in the beach, full sun, no problem. You usually get more blooms.
That's going to do it. Thank you so much. A quick show.
Awesome.
And again, we're pretty certain next week's going to be Melinda Myers. Tiger's going to check the schedule. Hey, thank you for tuning in on Biz Talk Radio Facebook Live. It's always fun, especially Facebook Live. The questions, the comments, and we really appreciate it. We do it every weekend, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, 11 o'clock Eastern Time Zone. That's AM, of course. For the entire crew, Tiger Palafox, John Bagnasco, I'm Brian Main. Have a safe weekend, a safer week, and we'll do it again next Saturday right here with your friends on Garden America. Take care.